All right, everybody, we're going to be starting the press conference. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Dan DeRocha, the Director of Communications. So without further ado, I'll turn it over first to Anthony Soto.
Hello, everyone. Anthony Soto, Superintendent of Schools in Holyoke here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and everybody out there listening. The mayor has a very important announcement for the community. As many of you know, we had a failed vote November a year and a half ago on 2 new middle schools, and we're back in the pipeline for 1 new middle school. And some of the feedback that we had gotten from the community, mainly the ones that were against the new schools, was that the committee was not made up of a diverse background, a wide range of thoughts. And that's something that's really important for this project to be successful. So we're really happy. I won't steal the mayor's thunder in terms of making the announcement, but the mayor's ready to make an announcement on what the process is going to be to select those committees. We have submitted a survey requesting folks to provide input on what it is that they'd like to see in committee members, what characteristics, and we have reviewed that survey, and Mayor Murphy is ready to make an important announcement on how we're going to move forward. So again, thank you. This is a monumental moment for all of our Holyoke Public School students who desperately deserve a new middle school. We haven't had a new middle school since the 80s, or a new school in general since the 80s. So it's really important for this community and moving us in the right direction. So I want to call up Mayor Murphy.
I'll take your notes there, if you don't mind. Thank you. So thank you very much. Thank you, Anthony. I'm stealing Anthony's notes. I heard he was giving good talk, so I'm going to make sure I copy his notes. So obviously, we are at another opportunity in the city of Holyoke. We've been welcomed by the Massachusetts School Building Authority to submit a proposal again. And to do that, we need to set up another school building committee. And so one of my goals is to make sure that that committee represents the diverse opinions of the city of Holyoke, the diverse populations of the city of Holyoke, and that we work together to find the best, most effective educational facility within our economic means. And I want to say that we've had our bonding council review the concept of the city having a new school and being able to finance it within our tax rate, and we have been given pretty solid evidence that in fact the city can afford the 1 school. And that we would be able to do that without any increase in terms of taxes or without an override necessary, which I think is important to a lot of people. Obviously, our goal is to make sure that we balance and provide a quality education to all of our students. So as acting mayor, I'm kind of in a peculiar position. I've been asked to do a lot of things in this acting mayor role. This is another one. And I want to make sure that I provide input for mayoral candidates, because obviously once I leave, they're going to be, this committee will be their responsibility. I would encourage whoever happens to be elected to make sure that you take this as a priority. This is something that the mayor needs to be actively involved in and needs to be a leader for the community. I will also encourage any member of the community that feels they have the time, the energy, and the commitment to work cooperatively with other residents, with other members of the schools, to sit down and figure out what is the best educational facility that we can get. What are the benefits of this? What are the disadvantages of this? Should we stay with the plans that were already out there? Those are some of the discussions that are going to have to take place. We're looking at potentially between 10 and 12 active full-time members of the committee. And when I say active full-time members, one of the things I want to do as I interview people, and I will interview people, is verify that they're making the commitment to be here. It does us no good if people volunteer but do not attend the meetings, and this is about a 10 to 12 hour commitment a month for several years. So obviously we're looking for people that are dedicated to doing this the right way. And I encourage all of those citizens, business leaders, educational leaders, members of all aspects of the community, people who have their children in the schools, to volunteer, to come forward, to meet with me, to let me know your thoughts. The second thing we're trying to do here is to create opportunities where you're not necessarily having to be here for 10 or 12 hours a month, but have subcommittees which would work on the specific aspects, whether it be the economic aspect, whether it be the economic diversity aspect, whether it be the transportation issues, whatever those kind of things that come up, that this smaller subcommittees would work with a leader from the full school building authority and make recommendations to that building committee. But time limit, we are looking for people submitting their applications through the mayor's office by August 30th, which would be 3 weeks from today. I would hope to be able to, within 2 weeks after that, put a committee together, having discussed what my recommendations are with any mayoral candidate that wants to meet with me, so that I will get their input. I will take that into serious consideration, and then hopefully get this committee started in mid to late September. I believe it's October, first week in October is the deadline to start it, and we have been given a little bit leeway because I am the acting mayor. With that said, I mean, this is a chance for Holyoke to do something positive, to do it and afford it, and to make sure that every child that we have in Holyoke has a chance to get an excellent education, and that's the goal. So I'll certainly entertain any questions, any comments. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recall that the reason that the vote was against building the schools was because of how much it was going to cost, not because there was a lack of diversity, not solely because there was a lack of diversity in the community. How is that going to be addressed in this second attempt?
I think certainly one of the things that I will be looking at is someone who has a diverse economic background, if you will, who may have been an opponent. Because I want people, if we just say all those that were in favor of it and that's who's back on it, we may not get the trust that we want. And it's got to be a community. We got to get one community. This is what we want to do. This is why we want to do it. And yes, we can afford it. But having somebody with a little more economic expertise who might have been opposed to it, but who can now see what the bonding council is saying, who can see that it's going to be within our regular tax capacity to build a new school and still be able to have the other functions that the city needs, I think that's an important aspect to have. And I think the community needs to hear from people who have opposed it on economic reasons, on economic grounds, that in fact they believe this is something we can do and we live within our budget.
Mayor, can you tell us, is this committee endowed with any power? Are they just giving recommendations? And what is the role of Mr. Soto here in the final decision making?
Well, ultimately, I think it all comes down, because eventually it's going to come down to school. This committee is going to recommend, I'm sure, I'm going to call him superintendent and not receiver. Nothing personal, but I like Superintendent Soto better than Receiver Soto. What I would expect is that they will make recommendations. Ultimately, it's going to require a bond. Ultimately, it's going to require mayoral and city council approval, which is another reason we need to have people involved early on throughout the process. Hey, if we're doing this, I've got a problem with it. Well, then what's the problem? Let's see if we can solve the problem in the early stages, not at the end. And I think that's important. We got to find out what the objections are early, if there are objections. But they would recommend to the mayor and the city council. The mayor would have to eventually submit a bond to build the schools. Obviously, the Massachusetts School Building Authority would have to go along with our plans and approve it. So they have a lot of influence. Final authority obviously comes when we're doing the bonding.
Is this the main site that you're looking at right here? Is this why we're here? I mean, I think the former receiver and the MSBA called it one of the worst poorly designed schools in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Is this a priority to knock this building down and replace it with a new school?
I'm going to say two things, and I'm going to be a little diplomatic. Not that I've ever been diplomatic in my life, but today I will be. So, first of all, I think this is definitely one of the spots, and it's certainly the one that right now MSBA is looking at as our priority. If we had financial information that provided other information in terms of our economic capacity, if for some reason all of a sudden we had several $1 million beyond our bonding and we could do things, maybe we look at other places. But right now I would say this is the priority. I think the other thing the committee's got to do, but this is down the road, or a committee's going to do is, okay, we've done this. Once this is approved, we've done this. What's our next step? Is there a next step? And if so, what is it? I know the school committee and the superintendent and I know he doesn't call them consultants. What do you call your group?
What group are you referring to?
The group of your leaders that help.
Okay, the cabinet team?
The cabinet team, okay. That they are trying to work out enrollments. How do we get students in the right school? How do we do this and how do we do that? And I will tell you, one of my concerns, and he knows it, one of my concerns is that we try to make this as comfortable and as convenient for the students attending. And by that I mean with as limited transportation needs as possible. I just think kids, if they can be in a neighborhood where they're walking, that just helps you get there. Whether you miss the bus, well, you can take a walk to school. Yes?
Last time there was a vote, we were told this is the only opportunity we have for this to happen. And now the authority has invited Holyoke to once again submit a proposal. How did that come along?
Well, for one thing, I was the chair of the Charter and Rules Committee when this came through in 2019, and I can recall very clearly speaking, and I don't remember the gentleman's name. That leader was, it's not Sullivan, is it? Leader from MSBA had indicated, yeah, this is your one chance. But on the other hand, they also said, because we've approved 2 schools, they also said, we won't go from 2 schools, but maybe you could do 1 school in the future. So, and I think they recognize that we have a need, and I think that's their goal. They just recognize we've got a need. We got to figure out some way to handle that need, to make educational opportunity in Holyoke better. And I compliment them for coming back and not saying, hey, we told you this is it, now get out of the line. Their goal, and their goal should be, how do they help communities, and Holyoke is certainly one of the communities, in need of assistance to provide the facilities for a quality education. I think they're stepping up to do that, so I thank them for that.
Mayor, if everything went as you outlined here in forming the committee, what would be the soonest they would come up with a recommendation, and how long would it take to put that through the process and actually get a school built and open?
Let me start with the school building and opening. As I recall, and Anthony, you correct me if I'm wrong, we've talked between fall of 25 and spring of 26.
Yep.
My goal would be fall of 25. I would love to have a new school opened so that kids are coming out of summer and going right into a new school. And plus you have the time for parents to know, well, my kid's going to be going to this school next year, rather than switching in the middle of the year. I'm sure that the children that would switch from fall of 25 to spring of 26 to go to a new school, they would probably be happy, but it certainly would be more chaotic in terms of organization. I would think the recommendations, we are looking at probably in mid to late 22 to get a final approval. We're trying to get on it for April, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
We're trying to get on the state MSBA docket for April of 22, and I would expect at some point, probably 2 or 3 months after that, that we would have some concept. This is what's happening. Yes, you are going to be authorized, and this is the funding that we're going to potentially authorize.
How much is the bond council saying your annual payment would be? We're talking about, we're probably, a school here is about $65 million probably. So what are we talking about in annual bond payments? Are we doing? Well, we wouldn't be doing,
but 2 things. We wouldn't be doing, we wouldn't be bonding $65 million. I mean, the state will be coming up with a significant portion. I would expect the state's going to come up with at least 30, 35 of that, if not more. Number one. I will tell, and I don't have the figures in front of me, I will tell you what they've done is they've looked at our bonding requirements for the next 20 years, plugged in what we expect the city would pay in a $30 million bond range, plugged that in, also plugged in, if I'm not mistaken, a $500,000 commitment from the school department to help offset some of that bond cost. And I think that's important to note, that the schools feel it's important enough that they would do that and provide those funding. So I would just tell you, we've gone over the 20 years. The cost, including the schools, would leave us, as a percentage of our total city budget, bonding would be similar. So it would not have a major negative impact on our budget.
Can I ask the superintendent a question?
Sure.
Superintendent Soto, could you please remind us why is it important to have these new buildings?
It's important to have these new buildings because our students deserve it. Our students deserve the educational, the environment conditions in the school that show them that we really value them. Our students deserve it just as much as other surrounding communities that are getting new buildings. We haven't had a new building since the middle 80s. I think it was 1987 was the last time that we had a new building, and that was Dean. And this building in particular, for example, was it was designed very poorly. The electrical capacity isn't there. We can't even add air conditioning. So offering summer programming in a school like this is just not ideal because it would be too unbearable for student learning. If you look at our windows here, they're tired. It's built in like pods, so there's a lot of safety concerns. But what we did many years ago was we tried to take a bunch of elementary school buildings and turn them into middle schools, and that just hasn't worked for our students. We have a lot of small middle schools spread across the city where teachers really don't have collaboration time, where the grade spans are 2 teachers per grade. So we're asking our teachers to teach out of content, in some cases teach out of their grade. This is really about bringing a real strong middle school experience and designing a facility that supports our educational plan for middle schools.
What would be the capacity of the middle school that you're proposing to build?
It would be 550 students, give or take.
Have you looked at demographic trends and things like that in terms of building a 550 student school? Are you going to have the students to fill it if you get it built by?
We would, absolutely. Yeah, when we were building 2 new middle schools, it would have been 502 buildings at 550 students, and that would be able to support our entire middle school population. Enrollment's been relatively flat for the last few years. I'd say the pandemic has had an impact on enrollment for Holyoke Public Schools, primarily in the early grades. So we're seeing a decrease in enrollment in our pre-K and kindergarten grades. Rightfully so. I think there's some families out there that aren't ready to send their young ones to school yet, and our enrollment reflects that. But we've been able to maintain relatively flat enrollment, and in fact, there's more students that are living in other communities and choosing to come to Holyoke Public Schools as one of their options than there has been in the last 5 years. So this press conference is about the school building committee, and I don't want an announcement like that to overshadow, because this is a really important part of getting new buildings. I will say that we do plan on releasing our full back to school plan by Wednesday, by the middle of this week. So and that will include all the information around masking, around safety protocols. We do plan on bringing our students back earlier than most districts in this region. Our students are grades 1 to 12 will be coming back Monday, August 23rd, and then the following week, pre-K and K will be added.
Mayor, what's the What's the process for people who want to be on the committee? What should they do?
They should. Can I do one thing before? I just want to. We had 550 for the enrollment, but I know when the original plans came out, there was room to get that to 600 or 610 and still be within an effective educational capacity. So, I mean, as we're working on plans in terms of where students are going to go, if we get this school, I mean, if we find out we need to have up to 600 in this school in order to not have crowding in other schools and make them more effective, we have the capacity to do that. As far as trying to get on the committee, they should just they could either write a letter and send it. They could call my office and set up an appointment and then send me a letter. But they have until August 30th. So I want emphasis. I can't keep waiting, obviously. I need to get this moving. I also want the time to be able to say, okay, these are the people that are asking to be on this committee. I think these make sense. The mayoral candidates may say, oh, I don't think you should do that. I'll listen to their concerns. Now, they won't have a veto, but I will certainly listen to their concerns. And if they're valid, I will certainly take those into consideration.
I know you guys were talking about sewer rates and increases and concerns for residents. How would you kind of address maybe some concerns that people have regarding not only maybe increased sewer rates, but increased cost of living because of building the school and access?
Okay. This building of school will not increase our tax obligation. I mean, that is going to stay stable. What I have tried to do with the sewer, which I do think makes sense, is balance our city budget, which would then make it much more predictable in terms of what we can provide and do so within our capacity. Obviously, that's an issue that's still out there. I'm still working to get some clarification as to whether or not we need to have another vote or the vote was already adopted. We've had some legal issues. I actually had a call in before here to have a city solicitor meet with me today. So, but again, this is an exciting opportunity. I think we've got a chance to make a difference. We've got a chance to make a difference with, if not unanimous support, certainly a tremendous percentage of support within this community. I don't know, even the people that were opposed to this, mostly on economic grounds, I never heard anybody say, we don't want kids to get a good education. Let's find a way to do that. And I think this is the valid compromise, at least to start with, and then we move forward. And I will say, and I want to give Anthony and his cabinet very strong endorsements. They are also working to make sure that what we do in the interim and what we do after the school is built also provides every school, every building, every student with a quality education. And with an integrated diversity in our schools, which is also critical. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Again, it's going to be, we'll have some action in the next 3 weeks as far as that's concerned, and then I'll be hoping to name the committee by September 13th, and then we'll get it moving. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We need to be working together to get healthy. And the school department on this Wednesday is doing a vaccine drive for 12 and over, but also anyone else that comes is eligible to get a vaccine at Holyoke High School's North Campus, the small gym, right?
The small gym, yes.
And then 3 weeks after that, they will be following up. We need to get as many people vaccinated as possible to keep our kids, our teachers, and everyone else healthy. Let's read the statistics. We are trying to help, not hurt.